My name is Brooke Mitchell, 32 years old, and I learned the hard way that family can be your greatest downfall. 3 years ago, I lost my husband Nathan in a car accident. 6 months later, I lost my inheritance and family business to my greedy siblings and father. And just last week, they called me a beggar at our family's annual charity gala, not knowing I now owned the entire venue, the catering company, and had enough wealth to buy their businesses 10 times over. My revenge wasn't just sweet, it was necessary. Before I start my story, where are you watching from? Hit like and subscribe to join me on this journey of betrayal and sweet, sweet justice. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how I turned the tables on people who thought they could throw me away like yesterday's trash. Life with Nathan was everything I'd ever dreamed of. We met in college during my sophomore year at a business ethics seminar, of all places. The irony isn't lost on me now. I came from the Mitchell family, owners of a successful chain of luxury hotels across the East Coast. Our name meant something in hospitality circles. Nathan Wilson was a finance major from a middle-class family in Ohio, brilliant with numbers and with the most genuine smile I'd ever seen. We dated for 3 years before getting married at 24. My father Richard initially had reservations. He'd always expected me to marry someone from our social circle, but Nathan won him over with his intelligence and work ethic. That was Nathan's gift. He could make anyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. We bought a beautiful colonial house in Connecticut, close enough to New York for business, but far enough to have space and tranquility. I still remember the morning sunlight streaming through our bedroom windows, the garden Nathan meticulously tended on weekends, and the kitchen, where we'd cook together while dancing to 80s music. Those memories feel like they belong to someone else now. Nathan and I traveled extensively, Paris in the spring, Tokyo in the fall, a safari in South Africa for our 3rd anniversary. We documented everything, planning to show our future children the world we'd explored together. Those photo albums are one of the few possessions I managed to keep. 5 years into our marriage, Nathan started helping with my family's hotel business. It wasn't planned. He simply offered advice when my father mentioned cash flow issues at one of our Sunday dinners. Within a week, Nathan had identified inefficiencies that saved the company thousands. My father was impressed enough to offer him a consulting role, which quickly evolved into a permanent position. Nathan had a gift for finances that transformed our family business. He modernized our accounting systems, renegotiated vendor contracts, and implemented a dynamic pricing model that increased revenue by 30% in the first year alone. My father began relying on Nathan more than his own children, which planted the first seeds of resentment. My sister Allison, who'd always expected to take over the marketing department, found herself reporting to Nathan on budget matters. My brother Tyler, who'd been coasting on his executive title without much actual work, suddenly had to justify his expense accounts. They smiled to Nathan's face, but complained bitterly behind his back. The last happy family gathering we had was at the Mitchell Hotel's 50th anniversary celebration. Nathan had just implemented a major refinancing plan that freed up capital for renovations across all properties. My father raised a toast to Nathan that night, calling him the son I always needed. I remember glancing at Tyler's face, the tightened jaw, the forced smile, the white-knuckled grip on his champagne flute. Allison excused herself shortly after, claiming a headache. I should have recognized the danger signs, but I was too happy, too secure in our success. 3 weeks later, Nathan died. A rainy night, a winding road, a truck driver who fell asleep at the wheel. I wasn't with him, I'd stayed home with a cold. His last words to me were, "I'll pick up soup on the way back." The police said he died instantly. The only mercy in this whole nightmare was that he didn't suffer. The funeral was a blur. My family seemed supportive, handling arrangements while I moved through the days in a fog of grief. Richard put his arm around me at the cemetery, promised I would always be taken care of. Allison helped clear Nathan's clothes from our closet. Tyler arranged for meals to be delivered to our house. The day after the funeral, my father came to the house with Harold Bennett, the family attorney. I thought they were bringing documents related to Nathan's life insurance, or our joint accounts. Instead, my father asked about Nathan's work files, specifically his notes on the refinancing plan. I remember being confused, even angry, that he'd bring up business so soon. He apologized, said it was urgent for the company's continuity. I told him to check Nathan's home office. That was the first mistake in a cascade of betrayals I couldn't yet see coming. Grief consumes you in ways I could never properly explain to someone who hasn't experienced it. It's not just sadness, it's a physical weight pressing down on your chest, making even breathing feel like a monumental task. 4 weeks after Nathan's funeral, I could barely get out of bed, let alone focus on business matters. My father and siblings used this to their advantage. "Take time to grieve," my father said, his voice gentle, but his eyes calculating. "We'll handle everything." At the time, I was grateful. Now I understand, they were simply waiting for the opportunity to strike. 6 weeks after the funeral, Harold Bennett requested a meeting at his office. My father and siblings were already seated around the conference table when I arrived. I should have brought my own lawyer, but the thought never crossed my mind. These were my family members, I trusted them. Harold slid a stack of documents across the table. "These are formalities," he assured me. Just acknowledging Nathan's work was done as an employee of Mitchell Hotels. As I flipped through the papers, certain phrases jumped out: work for hire, company intellectual property, no ownership stake. The documents essentially stated that all of Nathan's financial innovations, all the systems he'd developed, belonged exclusively to the company with no rights reserved for his estate, for me. Nathan was a paid employee, Tyler said, his voice matter-of-fact. Everything he created for the company belongs to the company. But he was promised shares, I argued. Dad said he would be given ownership options after the refinancing was complete. My father looked uncomfortable but firm. That was a tentative discussion, Brooke. Nothing was formalized. I later discovered Nathan had been meticulous about documenting conversations. He'd recorded my father promising him a 5% stake in the company upon completion of the refinancing, a stake that would have been worth millions. But the recordings were on his phone, which had been destroyed in the accident. Without proof, it was my word against theirs. I refused to sign the documents that day, which only delayed the inevitable. My family's legal resources far outmatched mine. When I hired a lawyer of my own, a former classmate, who charged me a reduced rate, we discovered the family had already filed paperwork establishing their claims. The real shock came 2 months later. Nathan had personal investments separate from the family business, tech stocks, real estate holdings, and startup investments he'd made with his own money before we even met my family. These assets would have provided financial security for me, but my family claimed Nathan had used company resources to manage these investments, making them company property as well. "You can't be serious," I said during a family meeting at my father's house. Those were Nathan's personal assets from before he even joined the company. He used company time and resources, Allison countered. He made trades during work hours, used the company's financial analytics software. There's a clear connection. I looked to my father, expecting him to intervene, to show some shred of decency. Instead, he stared down at his hands. "The company has to protect its interests, Brooke." The legal battle drained what resources I had left. My family hired a prestigious law firm, while I relied on increasingly desperate loans to keep my lawyer on retainer. Preliminary court rulings went against me as my family produced backdated documents and emails taken out of context. During a particularly heated confrontation at my father's office, I pleaded for fairness, for some acknowledgement of what Nathan had contributed to their success. Tyler's response cut deep. "Stop being such a beggar, Brooke. Nathan was replaceable. So are you." The stress took a toll on my health. I lost weight, developed insomnia, and suffered frequent panic attacks. My doctor prescribed anti-anxiety medication that left me foggy and disconnected. Meanwhile, the legal expenses mounted. The final blow came when the court froze all disputed assets during the legal proceedings. Suddenly, I couldn't access our joint accounts or investment funds. The mortgage on our home, the home Nathan and I had lovingly built together, went unpaid for 2 months, then 3. Foreclosure notices arrived with clinical detachment. I sold my car first, then my jewelry, including my engagement ring, something I swore I'd never part with. The beautiful colonial house, with its garden and sun-drenched rooms, went next, sold at a fraction of its value in a desperate short sale. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in a part of town my family would never visit. I sold furniture, clothes, anything that wasn't tied to memories of Nathan. My family watched my downfall from a distance, occasionally reaching out with hollow offers of help that always came with strings attached, signing away rights, admitting Nathan's work belonged to the company, agreeing to never speak publicly about the dispute. I refused every time, even as my resources dwindled to almost nothing. "You're just too proud," Allison told me during a rare phone call. "This stubbornness is why you're living like a beggar instead of accepting reality." That word again, beggar, thrown at me like an epithet, a reminder of how far I'd fallen and how little they thought of me now. In their eyes, I was no longer Brooke Mitchell, daughter and sister. I was an inconvenience, a loose end that needed to be tied up neatly for the company's sake. By the 8-month mark after Nathan's death, I was nearly broken, financially, emotionally, physically. I'd lost my husband, my family, my home, my security, and nearly my dignity. I survived on part-time work as an administrative assistant, a job far below my qualifications, but the only one that would hire someone in my visibly fragile state. Each night, I would return to my sparse apartment, look at the single photograph of Nathan I'd kept, and wonder how everything had gone so terribly wrong. Sometimes, in my darkest moments, I considered giving up the fight, signing whatever they wanted just to end the pain. But something in me, some spark of Nathan's determination, perhaps, refused to be extinguished. I just didn't know yet how that spark would eventually ignite. There's a strange clarity that comes with hitting rock bottom. When you have nothing left to lose, decisions become simpler. Mine came on a Tuesday morning, 9 months after Nathan's death, in a coffee shop I could barely afford to visit. I was nursing a single cup of coffee I'd made last for 2 hours, using the shop's Wi-Fi to search for better-paying jobs, when a familiar voice called my name. "Brooke?" "Brooke Wilson." I looked up to see Marcus Reynolds, Nathan's former business partner from college. They'd started a small financial consulting firm together before Nathan took the position with my family's company. They'd remained friends, occasionally meeting for drinks, though Marcus had never been fully embraced by my family, another red flag I'd missed. "It's Mitchell again," I corrected him, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. Wilson was too painful after. I couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus studied my face, taking in the dark circles under my eyes, my dramatic weight loss, the second-hand clothes. "I've been trying to reach you for months. Your number was disconnected." "Couldn't afford the bill," I admitted, embarrassment burning my cheeks. "How did you find me?" "I didn't. This is pure coincidence, or fate." He leaned forward. "Brooke, there's something you need to know." Something Nathan left with me. My heart stopped. What are you talking about? Marcus lowered his voice. Nathan came to me about 6 months before the accident. He gave me an encrypted hard drive and said if anything ever happened to him, I should wait 6 months and then find you. Only you. 6 months before he died. I repeated, struggling to process this information. Why would he? He was concerned, Marcus said carefully. About your family. About what might happen if his work with them was as successful as he anticipated. I felt a chill. He suspected they'd try to push him out. Marcus nodded. Nathan was brilliant with numbers, Brooke. He saw patterns in everything, including people's behavior. He noticed how your siblings reacted whenever he received praise from your father. That afternoon, we went to Marcus's apartment, where he showed me the hard drive. It required a password, our wedding anniversary, followed by the name of the street where we first lived together. So like Nathan to choose something only I would know. The drive contained meticulously organized folders, financial records, email correspondence, recorded conversations, and detailed documentation of every innovation Nathan had developed for Mitchell Hotels. Most importantly, there was an audio file dated 1 week before his death. With trembling fingers, I pressed play. Nathan's voice filled the room, and tears immediately sprang to my eyes. Brooke, my love, he began. If you're listening to this, something has happened to me, and the Mitchell family is trying to cut you out. I pray I'm being paranoid, but I've seen how Richard operates with competitors, and I've noticed Tyler and Allison's growing resentment. I want to believe they'd never hurt you, but business has a way of destroying family bonds. He continued, explaining where to find documentation proving his ownership stakes, which lawyers to contact, and how certain files provided evidence against potential claims the family might make. He'd created a complete contingency plan, not out of paranoia, but out of love and protection. Remember, Brooke, you're stronger than you know. Whatever happens, don't let them break you. I love you infinitely. The recording ended, and I sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down my face. For the first time in months, I felt something other than despair. Nathan had known. He had prepared. He had left me a way to fight back. Within a week, I had a meeting with a new lawyer, an aggressive litigator named Judith Reeves, who specialized in corporate disputes. Unlike my previous attorney, she wasn't intimidated by the Mitchell name or resources. This is gold, she said, reviewing Nathan's files. Not enough for an instant win, but enough to keep them from taking what's rightfully yours while we build a stronger case. Our first victory came 3 weeks later. A judge issued an injunction preventing my family from liquidating certain assets Nathan had documented as joint ventures. It was small, but significant, the first battle I'd won in this war. My father called the next day, his voice tight with controlled anger. What are you doing, Brooke? Haven't you put the family through enough? Family? I laughed bitterly. Is that what you call yourselves after what you've done to me? The conversation devolved from there, ending with my father's threat, you'll regret this. You can't win against us. Perhaps I couldn't win, not completely, but I could ensure I wouldn't lose everything. That realization marked the beginning of a new chapter. I decided to disappear from my family's radar while I rebuilt my life. I moved to a different city, changed my phone number, and ceased all direct communication with the Mitchells. Let them think they'd broken me. Marcus offered me a position at his financial consulting firm. The salary was modest, but it provided stability while we worked on developing some of Nathan's unrealized business ideas. Nathan had conceptualized a financial technology platform designed for small hospitality businesses, the very clients my family's company typically ignored as unprofitable. Our first client was a bed and breakfast in Vermont struggling with seasonal cash flow. Using Nathan's model, we helped them implement a dynamic pricing system and budget forecasting tool that increased their annual revenue by 20%. Word spread, and soon we had a small but growing client list. I also began seeing Dr. Melanie Foster, a therapist specializing in grief and trauma. Initially, I went to address my anxiety and insomnia, but our sessions evolved into something more profound. Your family's betrayal has become entangled with your grief for Nathan, she observed during one session. You need to separate them to heal properly. How do I do that when every memory of Nathan now has this shadow over it? I asked. By recognizing that what your family did wasn't about Nathan, it was about them. Their greed, their insecurity. And your response doesn't have to be purely emotional. It can be strategic. Strategic rather than emotional. That concept changed everything. I'd been reacting from a place of hurt and betrayal, understandable, but ineffective against opponents who viewed business as a chess game. If I wanted justice, I needed to start thinking several moves ahead. I taped a note to my bathroom mirror, strategic, not emotional. Every morning, it reminded me to channel my anger into productive action rather than consuming rage. Slowly, I began to rebuild not just my finances, but my sense of self, a self no longer defined by the Mitchell name or by being Nathan's widow, but by my own resilience and determination. 6 months after finding Nathan's hard drive, I won my first significant legal victory. The court ruled that Nathan's personal investments made before joining Mitchell Hotels remained his separate property, and therefore part of his estate, which meant they belonged to me. The amount wasn't life-changing, but it provided capital for what would come next. I was no longer at rock bottom. I was climbing, slowly but surely, toward something new, something built on the foundation Nathan had left me, but designed entirely by my own hands. And from this new vantage point, I could finally see the path forward with perfect clarity. 18 months can change everything. During that time, while my family believed I was struggling in obscurity, I was methodically building an empire they couldn't see. Marcus and I transformed Nathan's financial technology concept into a full-fledged company, Ascend Financial Solutions. We started with small hospitality businesses, offering the same financial tools and strategies Nathan had developed for Mitchell Hotels, but tailored for independent operations. Our client list grew from 10 to 50, then to over 200 within a year. To hide my involvement, we created a complex structure of shell companies. On paper, I was simply a mid-level consultant named Brooke Wilson, reverting to my married name not out of sentiment, but strategy. No one looking for Brooke Mitchell would find any connection to our growing enterprise. My appearance changed too. I cut my previously long blonde hair into a sleek bob, and dyed it dark brown. I lost the last remnants of my socialite style, adopting a more understated, professional wardrobe. When I occasionally glimpsed my reflection, I hardly recognized the confident woman staring back at me. "You look powerful," Rachel Henderson, my new best friend and our company's legal counsel, told me one evening over dinner. Rachel was the only person besides Marcus who knew my complete story. Not just successful, powerful. I felt powerful. Each morning, I woke at 5 to review international markets, before most of my family had even stirred in their beds. I studied business strategy like a religion, absorbing lessons from corporate legends and disruptors alike. I built relationships with investors who had no idea of my connection to the Mitchell name, people who valued me for my intelligence and insight rather than my family connections. Our company's growth allowed for strategic acquisitions. First, we purchased a small linen supply company that served independent hotels throughout New England, including several Mitchell properties. Then a boutique reservation system used by many Mitchell hotel clients. With each acquisition, I placed trusted managers in charge, while maintaining anonymous ownership through our corporate structure. Every Sunday, I spent an hour reviewing my family's public activities through news articles and social media. Mitchell Hotels was struggling, not failing, but certainly not thriving as it had under Nathan's guidance. My father, now 70, looked increasingly frail in photographs. Allison had divorced her husband and taken over as marketing director, while Tyler's position had been officially changed from executive vice president to chief operations officer, a lateral move that undoubtedly wounded his ego. Most interestingly, the company had taken on significant debt to fund renovations across several properties, renovations that, according to industry blogs, were failing to generate the expected return on investment. Through a separate investment vehicle, I began quietly purchasing some of this debt from banks eager to offload it. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked when I explained my strategy. "Buying their debt is one thing, but some of these moves feel personal." "They are personal," I admitted. "But they are also sound business decisions. The Mitchell properties have good bones, they are just poorly managed now. If they default, we'll be positioned to acquire assets at a discount." I also made it a point to hire former Mitchell employees, who had been mistreated or discarded by my family. Their institutional knowledge proved invaluable, and their loyalty to me, someone who treated them with respect and fair compensation, was unwavering. One such employee, Stephanie Collins, had been an event coordinator at the flagship Mitchell Hotel in Boston before being fired for challenging one of Tyler's wasteful proposals. Over lunch, she mentioned that the Westfield estate, the venue where the Mitchell family held their annual charity gala, was quietly being listed for sale. "The owners are getting older and their children aren't interested in the event business," she explained. "They're asking $20 million, but would probably take 16. The annual Mitchell Family Charitable Foundation Gala was my family's crowning social event each year. They invited political figures, celebrities, and business leaders for an evening of conspicuous philanthropy, more about being seen than actually helping causes. My father had always viewed it as the family's statement piece, a declaration of their social standing. I purchased the Westfield estate through a shell company for $17 million, allowing the previous owners to stay on as managers for a transitional year. They had no idea who the actual buyer was, dealing only with our corporate attorneys. Next, I acquired the exclusive catering company that had serviced the gala for the past decade. The owner, Antonio Garcia, was approaching retirement and had no succession plan. I offered him a generous price and the opportunity to stay on as a consultant, which he gratefully accepted. By the time the next gala was approaching, I controlled the venue, the catering, and several other service providers integral to the event's success. All without my family having the slightest idea. My personal life remained intentionally sparse. I worked constantly, took few vacations, and maintained only a small circle of trusted friends. My apartment, while in an exclusive building with excellent security, was modest. I had no need for ostentatious displays of wealth. I banked most of my growing fortune, remembering too well the feeling of financial desperation. Rachel occasionally urged me to date, to find some personal happiness amid my professional success. "You've built an impressive business, Brooke, but what about a life?" "This is my life," I would answer. "At least for now." The truth was, I did occasionally feel the emptiness of my existence outside of work. On the rare evenings when I returned home at a reasonable hour, the silence sometimes felt oppressive. I kept one photo of Nathan on my nightstand, not the formal wedding portrait, but a candid shot of him laughing on a beach in Thailand, carefree and brilliant in the sunlight. Sometimes I talked to it, updating him on my progress, imagining his proud smile. 3 weeks before the gala, I looked at an old family photo I'd kept buried in a drawer, my parents, Allison, Tyler, and me at my college graduation. We looked happy, unified. Had that ever been real? Or had the potential for betrayal always lurked beneath the surface, waiting for the right opportunity? I realized I felt nothing looking at their faces now, no anger, no hurt, not even satisfaction at what I was about to do. Just a cool detachment. Dr. Foster said this was progress, not numbness, but emotional distance that would protect me during what came next. Just be careful, she cautioned during our final session before the gala. Revenge rarely brings the satisfaction people expect. Make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. It's not just revenge, I assured her. It's reclamation. Taking back what was stolen from me and from Nathan's legacy. Whether that was true or simply what I needed to believe, I wasn't entirely sure. But I was certain of one thing: in less than a month, the Mitchell family would finally understand what they had created when they decided to destroy me. The Mitchell Family Charitable Foundation Gala was scheduled for May 15th, almost 3 years to the day since Nathan's funeral. Invitations went out to 500 of Boston's elite, promising an evening of gourmet dining, entertainment, and the usual self-congratulatory speeches about the Mitchell family's generosity. The theme was Renaissance, ironic, considering the company's financial struggles. According to my sources, my family was keeping up appearances while quietly seeking additional investors. The gala would be their opportunity to project stability and success to potential financial partners. I made an anonymous donation of $100,000 to their foundation, enough to secure an invitation as a platinum benefactor, with a prime table near the stage. The donation was made through one of my shell companies with a note requesting discretion, as the donor preferred to remain anonymous until the event itself. I knew they would accept. The foundation needed the money, and my family's ego needed the public display of support. They would assume the donor was a wealthy individual seeking social connection, rather than someone with a personal agenda. Preparations consumed me in the weeks leading up to the event. I selected a dress that was elegant, but understated, a black Valentino column gown with minimal jewelry. I wanted to look successful, but not flashy, recognizable, but somehow different from the Brooke they remembered. I had my hair professionally styled, keeping the dark color, but adding subtle highlights. I practiced my expressions in the mirror, the slight smile, the raised eyebrow, the calm stare that gave nothing away. I rehearsed potential conversations, preparing responses for every possible reaction from my family. Remember, we're not just going for shock value, I told Rachel during our final strategy session. This is about demonstrating control, showing them I've risen above their betrayal while they've been slowly sinking. Rachel nodded, though concern clouded her eyes. Just don't lose yourself in this moment, Brooke. You've built something remarkable that has nothing to do with them. Don't let this night define your success. The day before the gala, I met with Derek Johnson, the head of security I'd hired specifically for the event. Derek had a military background and a no-nonsense approach that I appreciated. We've vetted all staff, he confirmed. Everyone knows their role. If your family becomes confrontational, we'll intervene discreetly but firmly. They won't make a scene, I predicted. Image is everything to them. But they might try to get me alone, especially my father. Derek nodded. We'll have eyes on you at all times. Just use the phrase we discussed if you want extraction. I'd chosen Renaissance Begins as my code phrase, a nod to the event's theme and what this night represented for me. The venue staff had been briefed as well. To them, I was simply Ms. Wilson, an important client who needed special attention. Only Stephanie Collins, now my event director, knew my true identity and purpose. Everything is arranged exactly as you specified, she assured me during our final walkthrough. The Mitchell family will have their usual table set up. The catering menu has been approved without them knowing you're the new owner, and we've placed your table within clear sight of theirs, but not so close they'll notice you immediately. I stood in the center of the grand ballroom, taking in the crystal chandeliers, the ornate moldings, the gleaming hardwood floors, all mine now. There was a certain poetry to the situation that even my literature-loving Nathan would have appreciated. "Their empire is already yours," Stephanie said quietly, seeming to read my thoughts. "They just don't know it yet." The night before the gala, doubts crept in as I lay sleepless in bed. Was I taking this too far? Would this elaborate reveal heal anything, or just create more pain? I called Dr. Foster, knowing she would be honest. "Having second thoughts is natural," she said after listening to my concerns. "It shows you're still connected to your humanity, despite everything they did. So I should cancel. Walk away." I didn't say that. Only you can decide if this confrontation is necessary for your healing. But remember, the goal shouldn't be to hurt them as they hurt you. The goal should be to reclaim your narrative and move forward unburdened. After our call, I stood at my window overlooking the city lights. Nathan and I used to love city views at night. "Each light is a life," he would say. "Each one with its own story." I wondered what he would think of my story now, of what I was about to do. "I'm not doing this just for revenge," I whispered to his memory. "I'm doing it because some truths need to be spoken aloud. Some wrongs need to be acknowledged before healing can truly begin." Whether I was rationalizing or being honest with myself, I made my decision: the plan would proceed as arranged. Tomorrow night, the Mitchells would finally face the consequences of their actions, and I would watch it unfold from a seat they had unwittingly provided me. On the afternoon of the gala, I arrived at the venue early, entering through a private entrance. I would spend the first hour observing from a secluded room with security monitors before making my appearance. As guests began to arrive, I watched my family working the room. My father, noticeably thinner than in recent photographs, leaned slightly on a cane while maintaining his commanding presence. Allison, elegant in emerald green, laughed with practiced charm among major donors. Tyler moved between potential investors, his smile not quite reaching his eyes as he made his pitch. They looked successful, confident, untouchable. They had no idea their world was about to change completely. And I felt a strange calm knowing that after tonight, nothing would ever be the same for any of us. At precisely 8:30 p.m., I left my observation room and made my way to the entrance of the main ballroom. I wore a discreet earpiece connecting me to Derek's security team, and carried a small clutch containing the documents I might need. My heart raced, but my exterior remained perfectly composed, a skill I had developed over countless business negotiations in the past 18 months. "The anonymous donor has arrived," I heard a staff member announce into their headset. I entered without fanfare, a few curious glances turning my way as I was escorted to my table. I recognized several faces from Boston's social circles, though few recognized me with my transformed appearance. Those who did register something familiar in my features quickly returned to their conversations, unable to place me. My table was positioned with a clear view of the Mitchell family, though partially obscured by a floral arrangement, allowing me to observe them while remaining relatively unnoticed. For the first 20 minutes, I simply watched their performance, my father receiving congratulations on another successful event, Allison charming potential donors, Tyler networking with investors. They looked successful, but I could see the cracks in their facade, the slight tension in my father's shoulders, the too frequent glances Tyler cast toward the bar, Allison's smile that never quite reached her eyes. At 9:15, dinner service began. I waited until the first course was served before standing and making my way directly to their table. Derek's team moved into position, though remaining discreet. My father noticed me first. His fork paused halfway to his mouth, his eyes narrowing in confusion, then widening in recognition. Allison followed his gaze, her perfectly composed features faltering. Tyler, mid-conversation with a potential investor, turned last. Brooke? My father's voice carried a mixture of shock and wariness. Hello, father. I kept my voice level, pleasant even. Allison. Tyler. Lovely event. An awkward silence descended on the table. The other guests, business associates and their spouses, sensed the tension, but couldn't place its source. Well, this is unexpected, Allison managed, recovering first. It's been what, 2 years? 3, I corrected. Though I'm not surprised you lost count. My father cleared his throat. Perhaps we should speak privately, Brooke. Oh, I think here is perfect. I gestured to an empty chair. May I join you? I am a platinum donor, after all. Tyler's eyes narrowed. You? A donor? The anonymous one, I confirmed, taking the seat without waiting for permission. $100,000 seemed an appropriate amount. The table fell silent again. My father signaled a waiter, perhaps hoping to diffuse the tension. Bring Ms. Mitchell a glass of champagne. Wilson, actually, I corrected. I've gone back to using Nathan's name professionally. The mention of Nathan visibly unsettled them. Good. What are you doing here, Brooke? Tyler hissed, leaning forward. Haven't you caused enough trouble? I smiled pleasantly for the benefit of the surrounding tables. I am simply supporting a charitable cause. Isn't that what tonight is about? Allison laughed nervously for the benefit of the confused guests. Brooke has always had a flair for dramatic entrances. To me, she whispered, seriously, what do you want? Money. Is that why you're here? Once a beggar, always a beggar, right, Tyler? I said, recalling his cruel words from 3 years ago. Isn't that what you said about me? Tyler's face flushed. My father placed a restraining hand on his arm. The waiter returned with champagne. I thanked him and asked, could you please bring a bottle of the owner's reserve? The 2010 Bordeaux. The waiter looked surprised. The owner's reserve isn't on the menu. It's kept exclusively for the owner, I finished. Yes, I know. Please bring it anyway. The waiter hesitated, then nodded and departed. My family exchanged confused glances. You seem well, my father said cautiously. I heard you left Boston. I did. Best decision I ever made. I took a sip of champagne. You all seem to be doing fine as well, though I understand Mitchell Hotels has faced some challenges lately. Tyler's jaw tightened. Our business isn't your concern anymore. Interesting perspective, I mused. We'll come back to that. The waiter returned with the bottle I'd requested, accompanied by Gregory Peterson, the restaurant owner who managed the catering for the event. Ms. Wilson, Gregory greeted me with a respectful nod. I apologize for the confusion. Of course, the reserve is available to you anytime. My family watched this exchange with increasing confusion. You know her? Allison asked Gregory. Of course, Gregory replied, surprised by the question. Ms. Wilson is a valued client, I interjected smoothly. Gregory and I have worked together on several events. Gregory nodded, though his expression revealed his uncertainty about the situation. He personally poured the wine before excusing himself. How did you get the anonymous donor invitation? My father asked directly once Gregory had left. Those details were closely guarded. I have my resources, I replied. Speaking of resources, the renovations at the Tampa property seem to be running behind schedule and over budget. The blood drained from Tyler's face. The Tampa renovations weren't public knowledge. They were a source of considerable stress for the company. How did you, he began. And the Chicago properties occupancy rates have dropped 12% year over year, I continued. While your competitors in the same area have seen increases. Enough, my father cut in, his voice low but sharp. What is this about, Brooke? Industrial espionage? Blackmail? I laughed, genuinely amused. Neither. Just a curious observer with good information sources. Allison leaned forward. Look, if this is about Nathan's projects, that matter was settled legally years ago. Was it? I raised an eyebrow. Interesting perspective. A commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. The event coordinator, Stephanie Collins, was approaching our table with purpose. Mr. Mitchell, Stephanie greeted my father politely. I hope everything is to your satisfaction this evening. Yes, fine, my father replied distractedly. Excellent. Stephanie turned to me. Ms. Wilson, the special dessert presentation you requested is ready whenever you'd like to proceed. My father frowned. Special presentation. That's not on the program. Ms. Wilson made the arrangements directly, Stephanie explained. As the owner instructed us to accommodate her requests. Owner? Tyler repeated, confusion evident. The Westfields own this venue. Actually, I said, the Westfield family sold the estate last year. They stayed on as managers during the transition, but they are no longer the owners. I could see the pieces starting to click into place in my father's mind, though he couldn't quite assemble the full picture. Who bought it? He demanded. Northwest Ventures, I replied casually. A private investment firm. The initials weren't lost on my father, Nathan Wilson. His hand trembled slightly as he set down his wine glass. I nodded to Stephanie, who summoned Chef Antonio. The distinguished chef approached our table with a warm smile. Ms. Wilson, everything is prepared as you requested. Thank you, Antonio. I turned to my family. Antonio has been the exclusive caterer for this event for what, 12 years now? 15, Antonio corrected proudly. Though this is my first year working directly for Ms. Wilson's company rather than as an independent contractor. The color drained from Allison's face. Your company? I nodded. I acquired Antonio's catering business last year. Just as I acquired this venue. That's impossible, Tyler scoffed, though uncertainty had crept into his voice. You couldn't afford. Let's not discuss what I can and cannot afford, Tyler, I interrupted. It's precisely that kind of assumption that's led to this moment. My father, always quicker than his children, studied me with new wariness. What exactly are you saying, Brooke? I maintained perfect composure as I delivered the news I'd rehearsed countless times. I'm saying that for the past year, your annual gala has been hosted in my venue, catered by my company and serviced by my staff. The statement hung in the air between us. Around our table, the other guests continued their meals, oblivious to the earthquake reshaping our family landscape. But that's not all, I continued. The linen supplier for your hotels. Mine. The reservation system you switched to last quarter. Also mine. The financial service managing your company's debt. Partially owned by my investment group. Each revelation landed like a physical blow. Tyler's face contorted with rage, though he remained silent, aware of the surrounding guests. Allison looked physically ill. My father's expression was harder to read, shock and disbelief, certainly, but something else too. Was it respect? Or fear? That's not possible, he finally said, his voice barely audible. You had nothing when you left. We made sure of it. The brutal honesty of his statement, we made sure of it, confirmed what I'd always known, but needed to hear. My destruction had been deliberate, coordinated, and complete. Yes, you did, I agreed. You took everything. But you forgot about Nathan's business partner, Marcus. You forgot about the records Nathan kept separate from the company. And most importantly, you underestimated me. I reached into my clutch and withdrew a single document, placing it on the table. It was a statement showing my company's ownership of 30% of Mitchell Hotel's outstanding debt. This isn't even revenge, I said quietly. It's just business. Isn't that what you always told me? Nothing personal, just business. My father reached for the document with a trembling hand, examined it briefly, then clutched his chest with a sharp intake of breath. Dad? Allison's voice rose in alarm. Derek was at my side instantly, as was the event's medical staff. The confrontation paused as my father was given water and examined. It wasn't serious, a panic attack, not a heart attack, but the moment shifted the energy of our interaction. As the medical staff insisted my father rest for a few minutes, I stood to leave. I'd made my point. But Tyler grabbed my wrist, his grip tight. You think this is over, he hissed. You have no idea what you're doing. I looked pointedly at his hand until he released me. I know exactly what I'm doing, Tyler. I've had 3 years to learn. The question is, do you know what you're doing? Because from where I stand, Mitchell Hotels is 2 bad quarters away from defaulting on its loans. Loans that I now partially control. Allison stood as well, her voice shaking. You would destroy the family business for revenge. The family business. I laughed softly. The same family that called me a beggar. That took everything from me when I was at my lowest. That family business. Before she could respond, I nodded to Derek, who stepped between us. Ms. Wilson has another engagement, he stated firmly. As I walked away, I heard my father call my name. I paused, turning slightly. We should talk, he said, his voice weaker than I'd ever heard it. Privately. There are things you don't understand. I understand everything perfectly, I replied. But yes, we should talk. Send me a proposal through proper channels, my attorneys will review it. With that, I turned and walked away, feeling hundreds of eyes on my back, whispers already spreading throughout the ballroom. The confrontation had gone almost exactly as planned, yet I felt none of the triumph I'd expected. Instead, I felt strangely hollow, as if I'd exposed a wound rather than healed one. Outside in the cool night air, Rachel was waiting in the car. Well, she asked as I slid into the seat beside her. It's done, I said simply. They know. As we drove away from the glittering venue, I gazed back at the Mitchell Family Charitable Foundation Gala, my gala, in my venue, and wondered if the satisfaction I'd sought for 3 years would finally arrive in the morning. The morning after the gala brought no sense of triumph, only a strange calm, like the stillness after a violent storm. I slept surprisingly well and woke to dozens of messages, concerned texts from Rachel, updates from Derek's security team, and a formal email from my father's assistant requesting a meeting. I took my time responding to each, maintaining the control I'd established the night before. To Rachel, I confirmed I was fine. To Derek, I expressed gratitude for his team's professionalism. To my father's request, I directed a brief response to his assistant. Have Mr. Mitchell contact my attorney to arrange a meeting at a neutral location. Around noon, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered to hear my father's voice, not through an assistant or lawyer, but direct. Brooke? He sounded older, more vulnerable than I remembered. We need to talk. Just us. I hesitated. This deviation from formal channels felt like a manipulation tactic, an attempt to re-establish the father-daughter dynamic and bypass my business persona. Any discussion should include our legal representatives, I replied evenly. Please. The word seemed to cost him considerable effort. There are things I need to say to my daughter, not to a business adversary. Something in his tone gave me pause. Perhaps it was the absence of the commanding presence I'd grown up with, or perhaps it was simply curiosity about what he might say. Fine, I conceded. Tomorrow. The Bristol Cafe, at 2. Just you, no siblings. Thank you, he said, sounding genuinely relieved. I'll be there. The rest of the day passed in a blur of business calls and meetings. News of my confrontation with the Mitchells had spread through certain circles, creating both wariness and intrigue among business associates. I maintained my professional demeanor throughout, neither confirming nor denying the rumors. That evening, Rachel came over with takeout and wine. A tradition we'd established during particularly stressful periods. So are you going to tell me what actually happened? She asked, filling our glasses. Derek's report was thorough but clinical. I want the emotional play-by-play. I recounted the confrontation in detail, my family's initial confusion, their dawning realization, my father's physical reaction. And how did it feel? Rachel pressed. Was it everything you hoped for? I considered the question seriously. It wasn't about feeling good. It was about balancing the scales. And are they balanced now? I shrugged. I'm not sure scales like these ever balance perfectly. But at least they know they didn't destroy me. That matters. The following day, I arrived at the Bristol Cafe 15 minutes early, selecting a quiet corner table with a clear view of the entrance. I dressed professionally, but not ostentatiously, a navy blazer over a simple white blouse, minimal jewelry. I wanted to project confidence without arrogance. My father arrived precisely at 2, looking frailer than he had at the gala. Without the performance aspect of the charity event, the lines in his face seemed deeper, his movements more careful. He spotted me and made his way over, declining the hostess's offer of assistance. Brooke, he acknowledged, taking the seat across from me. Father, I replied. You're looking well. A polite lie. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. We both know that's not true. But thank you for the courtesy. We ordered coffee, the mundane interaction providing a moment to gather thoughts. When the server left, my father spoke first. What you've accomplished is remarkable, he began. Building a business empire in secret, acquiring our partners and creditors. It shows an aptitude for strategy one clearly underestimated. Is that an apology or a compliment? I asked. Perhaps both. He sighed. Though neither is sufficient. The server returned with our coffee. My father waited until she left before continuing. After Nathan died, I made a catastrophic error in judgment, he admitted. I listened to Tyler and Allison's concerns about giving you control of Nathan's work. They convinced me you were too emotionally fragile to handle it, that the company would suffer. That's a convenient reframing, I observed coldly. You didn't just withhold control, you actively stripped me of what was legally mine. Yes. The simple admission surprised me. There's no justification for what we did. I could claim I was protecting the family legacy, but the truth is I was weak. I allowed your siblings' ambitions to override my better judgment. And when did you realize your error? I asked. When you saw the company struggling without Nathan's financial guidance? Or when you learned I wasn't as broken as you thought? Both, he acknowledged. The company began declining within months. Nathan's systems were in place, but none of us truly understood how to evolve them. And yes, hearing rumors about your success made me question our actions. I studied him over the rim of my coffee cup. Why are you telling me this now? What do you want? Primarily, to acknowledge what we did to you was wrong. He reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope. But also to give you this. I took the envelope cautiously and opened it to find documents transferring his personal shares in Mitchell Hotels to me, 25% of the company. I can't undo the past 3 years, he said quietly. But I can try to make some amends. I stared at the documents, emotions warring within me. This doesn't change anything. I know. He nodded. You've built something impressive without us. You don't need Mitchell Hotels anymore. But Nathan helped build it too, and his contribution deserves recognition. I refolded the documents and placed them back in the envelope. I'll have my lawyers review these. My father nodded, then hesitated before asking, what happens now? With our debt that you control? It was the question I'd been waiting for, the business concern beneath the personal apology. Despite his apparent contrition, my father remained a businessman to his core. I have no intention of calling in the loans or forcing a default, I assured him. That would be mutually destructive and unnecessarily vindictive. However, I continued, my voice hardening, I expect full transparency in company operations moving forward. Any decisions affecting the debt structure will require my approval. Relief flickered across his face. That's fair. As for my siblings, I added, I have no interest in working with them directly. If I take these shares, any interaction will be strictly through intermediaries. My father nodded slowly. Tyler and Allison won't be happy about this arrangement. Their happiness isn't my concern, I replied evenly. They made their choices 3 years ago. Our conversation was interrupted by commotion at the cafe entrance. Tyler and Allison had arrived, scanning the room until they spotted us. I didn't invite them, my father said quickly, looking genuinely dismayed. Of course you didn't, I replied, standing. But they've always excelled at inserting themselves where they aren't wanted. Tyler reached our table first, his face flushed with anger. What is this? He demanded, gesturing between us. Secret meetings now. Lower your voice, my father ordered. This is a public place. Allison stepped forward, her expression more controlled but equally hostile. You're making a mistake, Dad. She'll destroy everything we've built. Everything you built. I laughed softly. That's revisionist history even for you, Allison. Before the situation could escalate further, Derek appeared at my side. I'd asked him to remain nearby as a precaution. Is there a problem, Ms. Wilson? He asked, his presence immediately changing the dynamic. No problem, I replied calmly. My siblings were just leaving. Like hell we are, Tyler began, but my father cut him off. Enough. Though his voice was quiet, it carried the authority that had once commanded respect throughout the business world. You two will leave now. You've done enough damage. Tyler stared at our father in disbelief. You're taking her side. After what she did at the gala. After how she humiliated us. She didn't humiliate us, my father replied wearily. We humiliated ourselves when we betrayed her 3 years ago. Allison's composure cracked. She'll take everything if you give her an opening. Can't you see that? I gathered my purse and the envelope, ready to end this unexpected family reunion. If I wanted to take everything, I would have done it already. Unlike you, I understand the difference between justice and vengeance. As Derek escorted me toward the exit, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. I turned to find Harold Bennett, the family attorney, who had helped orchestrate my disinheritance 3 years ago. Ms. Mitchell, or Wilson, he amended nervously. May I have a moment? I regarded him coolly. What is it, Harold? He glanced around the cafe, then lowered his voice. I want you to know I advised against the actions taken after Mr. Wilson's death. The documentation, some of it wasn't entirely proper. Are you confessing to legal malpractice, Harold? I asked, loud enough for nearby patrons to hear. He blanched. I'm simply saying there were circumstances you may not be aware of. Pressures from multiple directions. Save it, I interrupted. Your ethical flexibility is well documented. If you're worried about your professional liability, you should be talking to your malpractice insurer, not me. I left him standing there and continued outside, where Rachel waited in the car. As we pulled away, I glanced back to see my siblings arguing with my father through the cafe window. How did it go? Rachel asked. I showed her the envelope. He's transferring his shares to me. Rachel's eyes widened. That's unexpected. Indeed. I watched the cafe disappear from view. Now comes the interesting part, seeing if they can accept the new reality, or if they'll fight it. And which would you prefer? She asked shrewdly. I considered the question. I'd prefer they accept it. Fighting would be exhausting for everyone. But I'm prepared either way. That evening, alone in my apartment, I examined my father's share transfer documents more carefully. They appeared legitimate, with no obvious loopholes or conditions. If executed, they would make me the largest individual shareholder in Mitchell Hotels, a company that had once been partially mine, then entirely not, and now potentially mine again in a different configuration. I poured a glass of wine and stood at my window, watching the city lights that Nathan and I had once admired together. The confrontation hadn't brought the satisfaction I'd expected, but something else had taken its place, a sense of closure, perhaps. Or maybe just the freedom to finally move forward. My phone buzzed with a message from my father. Whatever you decide about the shares, I hope we can rebuild some kind of relationship. On your terms. I didn't respond immediately. 3 years of distance couldn't be bridged by a single conversation or gesture, no matter how significant. Trust, once shattered, couldn't be repaired through business transactions. But neither did I need to carry the weight of anger and resentment anymore. I had proven my point, to them and to myself. I had risen from the ashes they'd created and built something even more valuable than what they'd taken from me. Perhaps that was victory enough. 1 month after the confrontation at the gala, I sat in a sleek conference room in downtown Boston, watching as my father signed the final documents transferring his Mitchell Hotels shares into my name. Our lawyers flanked us on either side, the formality of the occasion belying the personal significance of the moment. That completes the transfer, my attorney confirmed, gathering the documents. Ms. Wilson is now officially the largest individual shareholder of Mitchell Hotels. My father nodded, something like relief crossing his face. Since our cafe meeting, he had kept his word, maintaining distance while the legal details were arranged, making no attempts to add conditions or extract promises in return. When the lawyers left to file the paperwork, we found ourselves alone for the first time since that day at the Bristol Cafe. I've appointed a new board member to represent my interests, I told him, keeping my tone professional. Jessica Winters. She has extensive experience in luxury hospitality. I know Jessica, he acknowledged. She's highly respected. A good choice. An awkward silence settled between us. We had completed our business transaction, but the personal aspects remained unresolved. I've been seeing a therapist, my father said suddenly. Since shortly after the gala. The admission surprised me. Richard Mitchell had always viewed therapy as a weakness, something for people who lacked the strength to solve their own problems. She's helping me understand the damage I've done, he continued. Not just to you, but to our entire family. My need for control, my inability to trust others fully, these aren't strengths. They are flaws that hurt the people closest to me. I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me, the wounded daughter, wanted to say it was too little, too late. Another part, the businesswoman who had learned the value of strategic relationships, saw an opportunity for a mutually beneficial peace. I appreciate your self-awareness, I said finally. It can't have been easy. He smiled sadly. Nothing worthwhile ever is. After a moment, he asked, would you consider having lunch occasionally? No business discussions, no siblings. Just rebuilding some kind of relationship. At whatever pace you're comfortable with. I considered his request. I can agree to quarterly lunches, I said, setting clear boundaries. We'll see how it goes from there. The relief in his eyes was evident. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. We parted with a formal handshake, the physical distance between us reflecting the emotional gulf that remained. While I had accepted his business gesture, our personal relationship, if we could rebuild one at all, would take much longer to heal. The situation with my siblings proved less amenable to resolution. The day after the share transfer was announced, I received separate calls from both Tyler and Allison, each more hostile than the last. You think you've won, Tyler spat, not bothering with pleasantries. But this company is my life. I won't let you destroy it out of spite. If I wanted to destroy the company, I wouldn't have invested in it, I pointed out reasonably. Unlike you, I make business decisions based on strategy, not emotion. Allison's approach was more calculated. We should meet, she suggested, her tone artificially pleasant. Discuss how we can work together moving forward. There's nothing to discuss, I replied. My representative on the board will handle any necessary communication. You can't just shut us out, she insisted. We're still family. Are we? I asked. When was the last time you acted like family, Allison? Was it when you helped take everything from me after Nathan died? Or perhaps when you called me a beggar at the gala? Her silence spoke volumes. We're business associates now, I continued. Nothing more, nothing less. I suggest we both accept that reality. The finality of my tone must have registered, because she didn't call again. Tyler made one more attempt, showing up unannounced at my office building, but security, forewarned of the possibility, refused him entry. With my family situation as resolved as it could be for now, I turned my attention to restructuring Mitchell Hotels. Through my board representative, I introduced new ethical guidelines, transparent financial reporting, and employee protection policies, changes that should have been implemented years ago. I took no direct role in operations, preferring to influence the company's direction from a distance. More importantly, I established the Nathan Wilson Foundation, funded with a significant portion of my profits. The foundation provided scholarships for finance students from modest backgrounds, and offered microloans to small hospitality businesses struggling to compete with larger chains. It was exactly the kind of project Nathan would have loved, practical help that created opportunities rather than dependencies. On the first anniversary of Nathan's death, after our reconciliation, I visited his grave alone. The polished granite headstone was simple but elegant, much like Nathan himself. I did it, I told him, placing fresh flowers beside his name. Not exactly as we planned, but I think you'd approve of the outcome. The business is thriving, the foundation is helping people like us, people who just need a chance, not a handout. I traced his name with my fingertips. I'm not angry anymore. That's the strangest part. I spent so long being furious, planning every detail of my comeback, imagining how satisfying it would be to see their faces when they realized what I'd accomplished. But when it finally happened, all I felt was peace. Like I could finally let go of the past and just be me again. A gentle breeze stirred the cemetery trees, sending dappled sunlight across the grass. It felt, irrationally but comfortingly, like Nathan's way of responding. That afternoon, I had my final session with Dr. Foster. Over the past 3 years, she had guided me through grief, betrayal, and the complex emotions of my revenge plan and its aftermath. "How do you feel about closing our formal therapeutic relationship?" she asked. "Ready," I replied confidently. 3 years ago, I couldn't imagine a day without overwhelming anger or grief. Now I can envision a future not defined by what I lost. "And what does that future look like?" she prompted. "Balance," I said after consideration. "Business success, yes, but also personal connections. I've been so focused on rebuilding my financial security that I've neglected other aspects of life." Dr. Foster nodded. "That's a common response to traumatic loss and betrayal. We focus on what we can control, often work or financial matters, while emotional healing takes a back seat." "I'm ready to change that," I told her. "I've started dating again, nothing serious yet, but I met someone interesting. His name is Ethan Lawrence, a professor of business ethics, ironically enough. He knows my story and doesn't seem intimidated by it." "That's wonderful," Dr. Foster said warmly. "Remember that vulnerability isn't weakness. It takes tremendous strength to open yourself to connection after being hurt." "I'm learning that," I acknowledged. Slowly. As our session concluded, Dr. Foster offered a final observation: "Your story isn't about revenge, Brooke. It's about resilience. Yes, you reclaimed what was taken from you, but more importantly, you rediscovered your own worth independent of family validation or financial status. That's the real victory." Her words resonated deeply. While the confrontation at the gala had been satisfying in the moment, the true healing had come through rebuilding my life on my own terms, creating a business empire, establishing the foundation, and gradually opening myself to new relationships. 6 months after the share transfer, I made a decision that surprised even Rachel. I started teaching a bi-weekly business class for women recovering from financial abuse or betrayal. The course, offered through a local community center, provided practical skills and emotional support for women rebuilding their lives after relationships or family situations similar to mine. "I'm not sure I'm qualified to teach this," I confessed to Rachel before the first session. "I'm still figuring things out myself." "That's exactly what qualifies you," she countered. "You're not presenting yourself as having all the answers. You're showing them what resilience looks like in real time." My first class had 12 participants, women ranging from 25 to 67, each with their own story of betrayal or financial abuse. I shared my experience openly, not as a blueprint, but as evidence that recovery was possible. "The path forward isn't about becoming invulnerable," I told them. "It's about learning to trust your judgment again, about recognizing your inherent value isn't tied to what others took from you." One woman, Jean, approached me after class. "I thought this would be about investment strategies or budgeting," she admitted. "But it's about something more fundamental, isn't it? It's about reclaiming yourself." "Exactly," I agreed. "The financial skills are important, but they're tools, not the foundation. The foundation is believing you deserve better, and then creating it for yourself." As months passed, my life settled into a new pattern, one built on conscious choices rather than reactive decisions. I maintained my quarterly lunches with my father, which gradually became less awkward, though never entirely comfortable. I kept my distance from Tyler and Allison, interacting only through business intermediaries. I continued teaching my class, watching with satisfaction as women who'd once been victimized reclaimed their power and built new lives. And I allowed myself to explore a relationship with Ethan, moving cautiously but steadily toward trust. He understood my hesitation, never pushed for more than I could give, and demonstrated through consistent actions that not everyone who claimed to care would eventually betray that trust. 3 years and 4 months after Nathan's death, 3 years and 4 months of grief, betrayal, planning, and finally resolution, I found myself at peace with my past and cautiously optimistic about my future. The scales might never be perfectly balanced, but they had shifted enough to allow me to move forward unburdened by the weight of what had been taken from me. My story isn't about revenge, though it might seem that way on the surface. It's about refusing to be defined by loss, about rising from the ashes of betrayal to build something new, something stronger, something entirely my own. It's about learning that true power doesn't come from controlling others or punishing those who hurt you, but from reclaiming your own narrative when others try to write it for you. If you're watching this and feeling trapped by your own story of betrayal or loss, remember, they may take your possessions, your status, even your sense of security, but they cannot take your resilience unless you surrender it. Your value isn't determined by what was stolen from you but by what you choose to create from what remains. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to hear yours in the comments below. How have you handled betrayal or loss in your life? What helped you move forward? Like and subscribe if you found value in this sharing, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay connected with more stories of resilience and renewal. Remember, sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't making others suffer, it's showing them they couldn't stop you from thriving.